The Oracle of Luna is a podcast with me, Bridget Engels, as your host. Here we have conversations with real live, present-day goddesses who are actively and courageously doing their magical work in the world. Each episode is a bewitching journey with relevant discussions on topics such as Wiccan pagan spirituality, writing, culture, magical practices, art, ritual, and the craft in its many forms. Merry meet! Welcome to another episode of the Oracle of Luna podcast. I'm Bridget Engels, your host, and today I am delighted to speak with the amazing Robin Corak. Robin is the author of Persephone, Practicing the Art of Personal Power by MoonBooks, and she has a new book out called Dream Magic by Llewellyn. Robin has been a featured speaker at Paganicon, Mooncon, Ninefold Festival, and many more. Robin is a tarot reader, death doula, Reiki master, and a longtime member of the Sisterhood of Avalon. She lives in Washington State. Welcome, Robin.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to chat with you. So if you're ready, everybody, let's get rolling, and be sure and stay tuned for a Persephone blessing at the very end that Robin has for us. So stay tuned for that, folks. So, Robin, a lot to unpack here, so I'm just going to jump right in. Okay, first off, like I always begin my show, how did your spiritual journey with the goddess begin? Do you want us to tell us a little bit about your magical journey and formative years?
Yeah, so my magical journey, I think, in a sense, actually began with Persephone. I've always been fascinated with myths and stories, particularly those about the goddesses. And when I was younger, well, I still do, but I have a rare medical condition. And so when I was younger, I was sick a lot, that sort of thing. And I really resonated with Persephone because of her challenges and people trying to make choices for her with the best of intentions, depending on which version of the myth you read. But I really felt like it really felt a strong connection to her. It felt like I could learn a lot. And then as I got older, I just really gravitated towards learning more about myths and goddesses and nature-based religions. And so I think I finally started formally following this path, I guess you could say, roughly 24 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been on this path ever since, and it has brought such joy and meaning and help to my life.
Wonderful. And did you grow up in Washington or
No, I actually grew up in Las Vegas, and I moved to Washington when I was, I believe, 18 or 19. I went back to Las Vegas for college and then came back here.
Okay, it's quite a difference.
Yes.
Great. And did you study or did you go to college and study spirituality or
I
writing?
did not study spirituality, but I did study, I studied to be a high school or middle school teacher with my specialty in English literature. So very much fit in many ways. And I ultimately, through different jobs that I had, ended up making my way to social services field and recently retired as the CEO of a nonprofit social services organization.
Oh, wow, that's great.
Hmm.
Wow, that's terrific. So what inspired you to start writing?
So I have always loved to write. For some reason, I think part of it, I was a voracious reader, still am. I think part of it is when I was a child and going through some difficult things, I loved immersing myself in stories in other worlds. It was like traveling without a passport. And I think hand in hand with that, I always loved writing. And so I've been writing stories and poems since I was a child, but I didn't really pursue that as something in a more formal capacity until I was an adult when I started writing some essays that were published in anthologies. And then ultimately, my first book, Persephone.
Mm-hmm. And were you in circles or covens after you got out of school or?
So I would say when I was about 30s, when I joined my first coven,
Uh-huh.
and that coven is no longer around, but I've been in a couple of covens, and then Sisterhood of Avalon, which isn't really a coven, but it's an international organization that does focus on women's mysteries, with a specific focus on Welsh, and Celtic stories
Mm-hmm.
and goddesses, and so had done quite a bit with Sister of Avalon, and even went to pilgrimage to Glastonbury in Wales, and so that's been a combination of solitary work, coven work, and then this within this organization, the Sisterhood of Avalon.
Yeah, Jenna was on the show.
Oh, she's wonderful.
Yeah, and what an amazing writer and
Yes.
human. Can you tell us a little bit about this amazing book, Persephone, Practicing the Art of Personal Power? What inspired you to write about the goddess Persephone? I know you've been a sort of reading about her and studying her since childhood, it sounds like.
Um,
So what was the impetus to actually get it published?
So I think I know for me, going back to that childhood experience for just a moment, I think one of the things I loved about Persephone was that here was this goddess. It was kind of a contradictory thing. Here was this goddess who was in a similar position in some ways, where I felt like because of my condition, people were really looking out for me and enabling me with the best of intentions. And then, but so this goddess, I related to a goddess, but at the same point in time, I thought, well, if she can't figure stuff out, how am I supposed to have any hope? But she did when I read the other versions of the myth. So she was always kind of in the background of my life. And
Right.
I
Yeah.
think more and more when I talk to people, people started to have more of a curiosity. And actually, the first book I intended to write was not about Persephone, but I did a meditation with Persephone because I was reestablishing my connection with her and learning more about her. And in this very powerful meditation, I was told that I would write a book, but it wasn't the book I was thinking it would be. And for some reason, I just came out of that inspired to write about Persephone. And I went to Greece shortly after I started working on the book, and just going to her sacred places just even further embedded this desire to share with the world someone who was not one of the original goddesses, but was so powerful and could still be so powerful today as we try to kind of navigate this crazy life that we currently
Right. And what are the Eleusinian
have.
mysteries in ancient Greece? I know you went to Greece. Did you
Yes.
take part in
Yes.
that or observe that? Okay.
I did not. So I went to Eleusis, where the rites were held in ancient Greece, and the Eleusinian mysteries are very interesting to me because they were state sponsored, which could be very unusual, and they were open to anyone. The only people that could not participate were people that had committed the crime of murder or people that were barbarians, which is taken to mean they did not speak the Greek language, but everyone else was open to participate. Now, we don't know a lot about them because they were mysteries, and you could actually, there could be pretty severe consequences if you shared what went on the rites. But various historians and archaeologists have indicated that, first of all, as I said, they were open to mostly everybody. So whether you were a slave or a servant at that time, or whether you were one of the noble families, you were on equal footing
Hmm.
during the two rites of the mysteries. So there was one rite that happened early on, and it was mostly a rite of purification. And that one you had to go through to go to the second rite. And the second rite took place in Eleusis. There was a procession from what is now a cemetery near Athens or in Athens to Eleusis. And it was over the course of many days. There was purification, there was dancing, but I think that the most critical piece was this reenactment of Demeter and Persephone's story. And while people that went through the mysteries didn't really talk about what happened, they did indicate that they felt at peace with death after those rites, just a peace and a freedom, I think, as they walked away from those rites. But they went on for many, many years. So they're quite significant when you look at different Greek rites and cultures and traditions.
Hmm. Hmm. And why do you think the story of Persephone is so compelling and relevant in the present day?
I think that there's a couple of reasons for this. I think, we're living in a society where unfortunately, in some places, it does seem like for women in particular, there can be challenges to our own personal sovereignty, our independence, our ability to um, to make our own way, to be self-determined in our life choices. And I also think sometimes just the way that life is right now, it can be very hard to gain clarity, and she's really good for gaining clarity. Also, when I talk to people, a lot of people that I've encountered that have chronic illnesses, and I felt this way too, you kind of feel like you're drawn to the liminal deities. You kind of feel like you're kind of on the bridge between in a certain sense. And Persephone can be an incredibly helpful guide with that. And I think too, as we get in our society, we get more and more to a different understanding of death and what a good death looks like. She's very helpful there too. So I think her lessons and her myths and the qualities that she possesses make her a really great ally for many different things.
Hmm. Is she considered a dark goddess?
So it's very interesting, and this is one of the things I love about her. Her title when she's in the underworld as the consort of Hades is the dread queen of the underworld. But she's also considered to be the goddess of spring.
Right. Yeah.
Both. She's both, which is I think beautiful because we as humans are full of contradictions, and that's okay. We can choose to be multiple things at once.
Persephone journeys into the underworld and she becomes queen of the underworld. So, can you explain how, as we journey into our own inner underworld at times, through either pain, death, loss, depression, or what have you, which are realities of living as humans. So, as we journey into our inner underworld, how can Persephone help us to step into our power and reclaim our sovereignty?
That is a very good question. And I think that part of it lies in our subconscious. So I view our subconscious as kind of the equivalent of our personal underworld. And a lot of times, what happens to us, often when we're younger, kind of becomes captured in our subconscious. And so if we've had trauma, be it small trauma, large trauma, I don't even know if you can measure but it gets stuck there. And so what happens is in our waking lives as we grow and we become adults, a lot of times those things in our subconscious have such a huge impact on the choices that we make and the behaviors that we exhibit, and we don't even realize it. And just to
Yeah,
give you a quick example, I have a friend who went through a lot of trauma as a child, and the way that he dealt with it was to push everything out, to just push away, I call it doing the turtle, pulling into a shell and pretending like everything was okay. That's what helped him survive. But as
right.
an adult with adult relationships, doing that is not helpful or healthy. And so you don't even realize you're doing it unless you undertake this work into your own personal underworld. And if you do that, I have found for me personally, being able to let go of so many things I didn't even know I was carrying around, but also doing it in a loving way, being able to have greater clarity about what I want, what my voice is. One of the things that in my book, I talk about is there's a meditation called Letting Go of Labels, where Persephone works with us to really consider the labels and definitions that people have placed on us or that we placed upon ourselves that may not be accurate or may not serve us anymore. So she helps us to see with clarity what it is we need to let go of so that we can enact our personal power, so that we can be self-determined and sovereign.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that takes a lot of shadow work. That's
Yeah.
another kind of key phrase for going into our underworld is to face our shadow selves. And that can be very scary and very hard and take time, but ultimately it's going to pull you into your power. One of the words that I was thinking of when you were talking is forgiveness.
Yes.
Letting go, forgiveness allows us to move forward in our power, right?
Yeah.
It's a way of like, yes, maybe this trauma, I was affected by it, but I let it go by forgiving. And
Yes.
then that allows me as a person to stand in my own power again.
Absolutely. And I think one of the hardest things sometimes is to forgive ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even when we're not responsible for what, may have happened to us. One of the most powerful experiences I had with Persephone, and one of the reasons I like working with her is in my experience with her, while she can be intimidating at times, she's with me, she's been mostly nurturing. and a safe space to do this work. But I remember there was one time in particular working with her where I was trying to get to the heart of something that I was dealing with. And when I did this meditation, what I saw was this angry creature that was just red and enraged. And when I really got down to the heart of it, all of a sudden that creature became a scared younger version of me in the corner crying. And
Mm-hmm.
so she is just so transformative for me anyway. And being able to see a little more clearly what the root of some of our shadows are. And being, like you said, forgiving and loving.
Yeah, and being able to see it and then also forgive it, and
Right.
then we can let it go. Yeah, so important, these lessons from
Yeah.
Persephone. She's quite a goddess. So after we read your Persephone book, how can we incorporate some of these goddess Persephone rituals or meditations
Sure.
into our own spiritual practice?
There's a lot of ways that you can do that. I have a lot of journal questions in the book because I find journaling to be very helpful. And I know it's not for everyone, but some of the meditations that are in there, it's not a situation where you do it once, you never have to do it again because our lives are always evolving and we're always evolving. And so I would say going back to the meditations every so often. And if we do journal, looking at the past and the present, I think creating the best way for me is creating an altar or a shrine to Persephone, and it can be very simple. It can be just a candle. It can be dried flowers, which I find are a perfect offering for her because the flowers associate with spring, and the fact that they're dried and dead associate her with the underworld. But a lot of times I just like to sit in silence and just kind of sit at my altar, my shrine, and see what comes to me. Spending time, it's like developing a relationship with anyone else. I think too, reading and rereading her myths and rereading different versions because
Hmm.
in some of her different versions, she chooses Hades
Yeah,
rather than being abducted. And so,
yeah.
really looking and reading between the lines, I think visiting her in meditation, and then, blessings or ancestor work. I do a lot with dreams. So sometimes she'll come to me in my dreams. And I also think one other beautiful way to develop a relationship with her is to do acts of service that relate to her, either in her guise as goddess of spring. So, for example, gardening, tending a garden, or in her guise as queen of the underworld, which could be volunteering at hospice. It could be any number of things. So there's a variety of ways to do that.
Yeah. In the fall, I have a pomegranate and I think of Persephone and I place the
Right.
pomegranate on my altar.
Yes.
And I think of Persephone, also Demeter, but that's primarily when I personally think of her. But now that I have your book, I'm going to take a little bit more active approach to working with Persephone because I have a guided meditation in my new book and new audiobook. And it's about lunar eclipses, and we take a journey to the underworld with Persephone. So I've been working with her throughout that process, but she's multifaceted, as you
Yes.
say.
That's wonderful.
So, okay, you have a new book coming out. Do you want to chat a little bit about that and some of your
Sure.
upcoming plans for the future?
Sure. So I have a book entitled Dream Magic coming out with Llewellyn in November of this year. And it really is a comprehensive look at different ways that you can work with your dreams. I've also found dreams to be fascinating since I was a child. And so it goes over everything from dream work basics to dream recall, lucid dreaming, underworld dreaming. And there's a lot of hands-on tools and activities in there as well. But Persephone does make an appearance as one of the dream allies that I've worked with because of her association with the underworld and the subconscious. I find that is in our dreams, it's a very conducive way to work with her too. But yeah, that
Hmm.
one's coming out in November, and I'm also doing a short workshop at Llewellyn Con this coming June 7th, and
Oh,
that's a free.
wow. I just
That's
had Elisia Gallo. She's a
Did
senior
you?
acquisitions
Yeah.
editor on the show. So she mentioned Llewellyn. So, oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that. Okay.
So I'll be doing that DreamWork basics, and I'm sure I often try to get out and speak at least a few times a year and do some things locally. So I'm sure I'll be working on that as well. And people can usually keep up with me on Facebook or Instagram, just looking at my name, and I'm happy to accept people.
Hmm. And do you teach in-person workshops and courses in the Seattle or Washington state? area?
So I need to get back into doing that. I have in the past at local metaphysical shops and things like that, and I would like to get back into doing that in the near future.
Do you have a website or blog?
I do, yes. So my website is www.phoenixawen, Awen, rising, .com. And I do write a blog. I've been a little bit negligent when I was working on the book, but I do write a blog for Agora Pathos, and it's entitled Phoenix Rising.
I'm gonna let you do your short goddess Persephone blessing and then we'll circle back. So
Well,
have at it.
okay. Well, thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to do this as well. Just going to ask people just to take a moment, monitor their breathing, pay attention to their breathing. Persephone, goddess of spring, dread queen of the underworld, consort of Hades, daughter of Demeter, blessed Cora, sovereign lady. Bless us with your guidance. May we see with clarity. May we let go of that which no longer serves us. May we recognize and manifest the beauty within us. May we better understand and own our own sovereignty. May we learn to own our choices and to share our voice and our authentic selves. We thank you for your guidance, Persephone, for your presence, for your nurturing, your lessons, and your love. Hail, Persephone, blessed be.
Hail Persephone. Thank you. Wow,
Yes.
I just felt so grounded while you went through that.
Oh, great.
Thank you. That was beautiful. So, thank you again for coming on the show and speaking about all your magical offerings and your passion for goddess Persephone and your inspiration with all your books for us to connect with the goddess and dreams. I think what you're doing is fabulous, and I wish you all the luck in the future. So blessed be. And thanks for all the listeners for tuning in today. And please check out Robin's Persephone Practicing the Art of Personal Power book. And yeah, check out her website and blog. And thank you again, Robin.
Thank you so much, and thank you as well to our listeners. I've really enjoyed being here, and it's great to have an opportunity to share my love for Persephone with the world. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks again. All right, I'm gonna sign off here. Blessed be, and have a great day, everybody. Bye bye.